Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome one and all to my brand new podcast, Chatting with the Bondman, the podcast where the Bondman chats with awesome people. And today you guys are in for a real treat because for those of you who want to get into the stunt movie business or the movie business, this is the podcast for you. To kick off my podcast, I am interviewing a very legendary stuntman by the name of Anthony DeLongis. He has been in the business for over 4 decades and has worked with many different actors and has choreographed countless stunts. He was gracious enough to let me do a half-hour interview with him. He was very wonderfully forthcoming and very generous with his time. So without further ado, on with the show. Now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome one and all to the first episode of Chatting with the Bondman, where the Bondman chats with awesome people. And today we're going to interview a very legendary person in the movie business. He has been in the movie business for quite a while now. And for those of you who want to get into the movie business or even the stunt business, this is the perfect way to learn. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to welcome Mr. Anthony DeLongis.
Hello. Thank you.
Appreciate
your having me. I look forward to our chat.
Yeah. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule for doing this for us. This is very much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So the first question is always the same. You grew up in California, correct?
No, actually, I was born here. My mother remarried, and we moved to Canada, to London, Ontario, where I went all the way through public and high school. And then I came back here in 1967 to go to college. And I was accepted at both Northridge and UCLA. But I thought I'd probably be more comfortable at the smaller school. The irony of it is I then, a few years later, taught in the UCLA Theater Arts Department for 19 years. So I guess I got the best of both worlds.
Well, there you go. So just a little side question. What kind of movies did you grow up watching?
My mother was a movie fan, and I think I got much of my love of movies from her. Well, basically, we liked a good story. We liked good characters. She was an amazing woman. Her name was Alma, and she was graduating high school when the Japanese dropped when they bombed Pearl Harbor. So right out of high school, she went to work for the defense factories, and she built planes through the end of the war. And then she moved on to become the first woman shift boss at Technicolor back in the old 3-color process days, which was the gold standard. I think it still is. I mean, it's an extraordinary color, in the film process, which is they don't do. Only a few people do that anymore, but it is pretty wonderful. And any two way, but the films that she liked. I'm a huge fan of the Western genre. I grew up with John Ford and John Ford and.
John Wayne?
Well, of course, John Wayne. I'm just trying to think of the other actor, Howard Hawks. And of course, then when I hit college, Sergio Leone was just starting to breathe new life into what the old classic Westerns were. I grew up in the 50s when, that was Robert Duvall likes to refer to the Western as the storytelling genre of America, that the English have Shakespeare. I started in Shakespeare at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego. I've played Iago twice, which not very many stuntmen can brag. So they used to call them odors, and referencing what the horses ate. But I was in love with it, and I always wanted to get on a horse. I had a hobby horse that I rode the hell out of, apparently, my mother tells me. And then when I, graduated college and started, working on my career, first in theater. And then I got my equity card I started in theater at the Old Globe in San Diego in 1973. And that's when my professional career started, because that's when they started paying me. So I said, okay, now I'm a professional. I'd just like to work more often. It's still true. But 74, I got my equity card. 75, I joined SAG. And I've been a member of SAG ever since. I started adding to, I found that the more skills I had, the more often I worked. So that's when I started really developing my physicality and my weapons expertise. I was a collegiate saber champion. That was my first martial art. I worked with Maestro Ralph Faulkner, who was known as the Swordmaster to the Stars. He did, everything from the original Prisoner of Zenda, with Ronald Coleman and Doug Fairbanks Jr., to The Court Jester and, the Seventh Budget Sinbad, and many, many more in between. An extraordinary teacher and a wonderful man. And then I did Taekwondo, and, have a few roles where I was doing some kicking. I did Circle of Iron with, I worked with David Carradine 3 times. The first time was in Israel on Circle of Iron. And now I did, it was actually great fun. It was where I first met, oh golly, what's just got an, the name just flew out of my head. Lauren Janes. Lauren Janes, who was the, extraordinary stuntman. He was Steve McQueen's stunt double. He was working a show called MacGyver, the first one, and I did the climactic to the end of the first season. It was called Pietro the Assassin, which was an ideal role for me because I could combine both my physical skills and my acting skills into this great role. I had multiple accents that I was doing. And then I was literally, back in the day, I could do that, pinning myself to the ceiling like a ninja and, having hidden scars and, secret curare needles. And it was a wonderful role and had a grand time. And then, of course, I'd run into Lauren, a few times over my career. It was always such a pleasure. And he was originally going to, later on I did Masters of the Universe, and I played Blade, which was all over the world I've traveled. And it's amazing how many people loved that movie and were affected by that movie. And, just that cartoon as they were growing up. And mine was a character that I got to create because it didn't exist in the He-Man universe. Walter Scott was the coordinator on that, and that was my first time meeting Walter. And Walter, Lauren was originally going to be the sword master, and Lauren saw it was me, and he says, "Well, you know more about this than I do. You trained Dolph Lundgren." So I trained Dolph Lundgren, and then I performed with him as Blade, and then I ended up doubling Frank Langella because, Walter Scott's no fool. He said, "Well, I got you as an asset, and we'll just you're on salary, so we'll just utilize your, as much as possible." So it made it a fun and busy shoot for me. But that was it was great fun, and working with both those gentlemen. I worked with Walter several times. I worked with him first on that, and then I worked with him on Bad Girls, and then The Magnificent Seven, and then our last great collaboration was on Secondhand Lions, where I did all the flashback swordplay for him, and I was with Michael Caine and Robert Duvall and Haley Joel Osment. But I guess about a year after that, Christian Kane called me up, and he was doing a show called Leverage. And he said, they want to introduce my character, as this, essentially the muscle, the real badass. And, I said, well, get Anthony DeLongis in here, and, he'll make me look good. And so they called me in, and in about 45 minutes, because I'd had the opportunity to train him, and Christian's very talented. And so in less than an hour, we put together a 5-phase fight that we shot as masters. Charlie Brewer, I believe, was the coordinator, but he was very pleased. He just basically did a steady cam, and he shot our fight. We were on this location in the kitchen. He says, "You can't break anything." So I said, okay. So we danced around in here with I was the butcher of Kiev. So I was playing the Russian character with he's very famous very, very bad guy. And so I said, well, they had it in the script that I was supposed to get a knife out of a block. And And the only piece of choreography in the script was I had to be disarmed with a whisk, a kitchen whisk, because Christian Kane was masquerading as a chef. So I said, well, if this guy's the butcher of Kiev, he probably has his own weapon. So I had my very good friend Dave Baker, create a cleaver for me overnight. The prop guy was very happy, and so I pulled that out, and then I grabbed the knife, and so now I've got a weapon in each hand. And Christian Kane's grabbing pots and things, and we did this. But I was very proud of him because there aren't a lot of actors who can do a 5-phrase fight start to finish, and we just shot 3 masters and we were done. They took it apart for the show, but I put it back together again because it's a good fight. So that was fun. It's where, well, as I said, I started with European fencing, and then I went to Taekwondo, and then I trained with Guru Dan Inosanto for over a decade in Filipino martial arts, and now I'm currently, I think, in about my 12th year under Kaiso Toshishiro Obata and my sensei Matthew Lynch in Japanese swordplay, which is kind of fun because my inspiration for getting into choreography initially on stage were the films of Akira Kurosawa, Yojimbo and Sanjuro and Seven Samurai, and all of those, because I thought, and here was the point: they told a really dynamic, character-driven story with their action. It wasn't. Sometimes the action can be a lot of athletics that's seemingly unmotivated, or it's like, well, that's really flashy, but what am I seeing? There's, alas, we went through a long period of shaky vision and wobble scope and, quick cuts and the camera being way too close. I come from a stage background, so I'm going, if I can't follow the narrative, how am I supposed to get emotionally invested in these characters? So I've tried to take that into my choreography. One of the things I did was Highlander. I guess started on Highlander in season 3. And they were very, very pleased. Apparently, Adrian Paul, the star, called up the producers and said, "This guy's really good. Do we have to kill him?" He says, "Oh, yeah, he has to die." And so I spent the next year going, "How do I get back on the show?" And they said, "Oh, but you were so distinct." And I says, "I'm an actor. I can be different." They said, "Well, if you can come up with a backstory." So by that point, they were heading into their 5th season, which was almost 100 hours of television. And I said, "Well, how about this? No, we did that one. And how about this? No, we did that one." And I said, "Well, how about the debt that can never be repaid?" And they liked that. And it was kind of funny because I had just presented sword ideas to Robert Rodriguez, who was supposed to do Zorro, the Anthony Hopkins Zorro. And alas, 3 days later, he left the project, and Martin Campbell brought in Bob Anderson. You can't kick about Bob Anderson. I mean, he earned his place at the top. So I didn't get that, but a week later, the producer of Highlander called me up and says, "You want to go to Paris? We wrote this episode for you." And I says, "Yes, I do." And I actually introduced a fighting style that had never been seen on film before called the Mysterious Circle. It was by a sword master from the 17th century called Thibaut. He's actually one of the names they throw out in The Princess Bride, which is very funny. But I was very pleased that it was. What makes it exciting is you're always at sword's point. It's very close up. You're always within one step of being either able to hit or to hit, and it's all about subtle, elusive footwork to create superior leverage, which is a foundational principle of all martial arts. But we'd never seen this style before. So I not only got to create a role that had been written for me based on my idea, but then I also got to present a style of rapier and dagger fighting that in all of the, in all the years and all the Three Musketeer movies and however many times we had seen swordplay, because we went from Westerns to, I mean, they've made the Three Musketeers about 12 times, but it had never been done before. So I was pretty excited about that. That was a lot of fun. What it comes down to, and here would be, such advice as I can give, is never stop learning, never stop training, because knowledge is choices and your art is in your choices. And so I can, with all of this background and these, I've been a working professional 47 years and counting now. I can make a weapon of opportunity out of pretty much anything. I can give you a classic interpretation of specific weapons and specific period and fighting styles. But I can also take that knowledge and, I trained Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. I trained Harrison Ford with the whip for Indiana Jones, Crystal Skull. I trained the whip fighters in The Rundown. Trained Ellen Barkin and Angelica Houston as Calamity Janes in various projects. Actually, I came in on Bad Girls with the whip for Walter Scott again. So, and for Tony Boggs, I did a thing for him in a project called Into the West. So basically, but I can take that knowledge and anything flexible. Like I've done action sequences for, it was a woman and she was up against a much bigger and better trained killer, essentially. And by stealing the belt off of somebody else, it gave her an equalizer. So I was able to do things that I had originally figured out with the whip with a belt. And as I said, it gave her an equalizer. But the idea is I always try to make sure that my action drives story and articulates character, and that the audience can follow the narrative of it so they become emotionally invested on a visceral level with the story and with the character. And it's just much more satisfying for everybody.
Oh, definitely. And back to what you said about, being a stage actor. I was a stage actor for a long time myself. I've done musicals, I've done regular plays, and it's very true. You have to really get emotionally invested in your character. And one thing I've noticed between stage and film is that when you're on stage, you have to exaggerate your acting just a little bit because you are in front of people and you do have to raise your voice, just a little bit so the audience can hear you. But you are totally correct, though. You do have to really invest in your character, whether you're on camera or on screen, especially with method acting. And so I've done Grease like maybe 2 or 3 times. And I was Danny one time and I was Kaneki in the other. And being that I was in high school at the time, I basically just I tried talking like Jeff Conaway, but I just ended up sounding like Fonzie from Happy Days. So because
Well, it's you of course have to invest, or I would say, another word might be commit to your choices, to create your character for the audience so that they see somebody that they can identify with and who's and a character that they want to go on the journey with. I was talking a little more towards the idea you are trying to coax the audience into investing emotionally in the character and the story you're telling, and it's a combination of the two. You talk about stage. It is a little more exaggerated, but I would say you have to project what you're doing because you're in a theater and you have anywhere from 60 to 3,000 people in it, and you have to make sure that everybody gets the good stuff. So that's craft, and that comes down to you need to know what the technical aspects are of the medium that you're working in, and then be able to get them to work for you. For example, on stage, you understand when I say that you open to the audience. A lot of beginning actors will have a tendency to close themselves off, and they're kind of hiding. So the audience can't really see what they're doing. You can't do that. Your choices always have to. And if you're working in the round, you have to be able to move so that at least 90% of the audience gets to see what you're doing all the time. Proscenium is of course flat, like the camera's locked off. In the round you've got this, or a thrust theater. But you get into film and television, you need to understand. And I don't bother the director very much. I learned that early on when I was a performer. I made friends with the cameraman. I'm going, where's this shot? Because if it's in a full shot, they used to call them the 5 T's, but that's a different story. If you're in a full shot, I get to use my whole body. If you're in a medium close up, I have half my body. If you're in a tight close up, then so I have to be sure that I'm not rocking in and out of frame. If I'm talking to 3 different people in a full shot, I get to use some of my body. In a medium close-up, it's a lot less. In a tight close-up, it's almost just the eyes. So understanding the technical demands of the particular medium. They say it's a director's medium, but yeah, he's setting up his shot, and whatever you do, you have to be able to match what you did in the master, or you're going to end up on the floor because he can't cut to you. So that's something that's required of you in the stunt business, in the action business. You have to understand where the camera is, and like with a punch, it is very easy for a punch to miss. And if the punch misses, then your credibility for the whole sequence goes out the window. And these days, the camera is almost constantly in motion. So as a performer, you have to understand these are the angles that this work from. And I have to be sure that I'm always presenting the angles to camera. Or if you have multiple cameras, you're going, okay, I know this works on these two cameras. It doesn't work on this one, but we do have the shots so that, we can edit the sequence together, and it's very effective for the audience. So these are things that, it is your job to learn and understand and then maximize.
Definitely. And you are right about, when it comes to punches and other things, because as I remember, I was doing my homework on the Indiana Jones movies, and in Raiders particularly, Steven Spielberg had 3 of the best stuntmen in history working on that film. He had Glenn Randall. He was the coordinator, like the fight choreographer. Terry Leonard is, as we all know, as the stunt guy who went under the truck. And for you indie freaks out there, he's the one who actually invented that stunt. And Vic Armstrong. Have you met Vic Armstrong?
I know his brother. I spoke with Vic. I was trying to get him to hire me for a job, but he was going in Hong Kong. It was the third Mummy movie. And he said, I can't really use you. It's mostly Asians. And I went, okay, well, thank you. I appreciate it, sir. Thanks for getting back to me.
Yeah.
But actually, Terry, he executed that stunt beautifully. He came back and did it again for Maverick, the Mel Gibson Maverick. But no, the Yakima Canutt invented that stunt,
right?
For Stagecoach. But
that's true.
But Terry did him proud, and actually, they had to dig a trench for him because the truck was too low. So not only is he, under there and imperiled, and he's doing all that he's doing, and making Harrison look great, but he also has to stay within the trench. So I don't know who was driving, but I think it was a team effort.
Glenn Randall was actually the one who was driving the truck, because I remember watching the documentary, and Terry said, he said, Glenn, you're driving the truck. He said, I have a lot of confidence in Glenn. I trust my life with him. And it's true. They did dig a trench under the truck because the gearbox was way too big and Terry didn't have enough clearance to go under the truck. And and also I know he didn't invent this stunt, but it was his idea for the movie because it's been eating away at him for so long because of what happened in Stagecoach. What happened in Lone Ranger, Legend of the Lone Ranger. He said one of the wheels broke his handhold loose and shot him out of the passenger side of the coach, and one of the wheels rode under his legs. And he said, needless to say, if he hadn't gone out there head first, it would have been a completely different story. And so Terry wanted to redeem himself in Raiders and said, is there any chance I can go under the truck and come out through the back of the truck? And then they said, hey, not a bad idea. So it's one of those great moments where
I didn't know that much detail on it. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I just thought that, when you do something well, it becomes an homage, and, or when you take something that you've seen before in another medium, in another time, and you can, utilize that story. It's sort of like you're building on, a story that people are familiar with, and then they just go, they love it all the more. So, enormous respect and admiration for, Terry and Glenn and Vic as well.
Yeah, and Vic Armstrong, they used him for most of Harrison's doubling because back in those days, he pretty much resembled Harrison. And from what I remember in Temple of Doom, Harrison suffered a horrible back injury doing a stunt where he's fighting a guy in his hotel room and he flips him over in the back and his back just went out on him. And so they had to fly him to LA to get a surgery done. And so they had Vic Armstrong doing the conveyor belt crusher scene. Yeah. And so they had to. So basically, during that scene, when you see the back of Indy, that's Vic Armstrong doing his thing. And then when Harrison came back 6 weeks later, they just plugged in his close-ups.
Well, you do what you have to do in order to deliver the product, and it it's very effective. It worked great. You can't really get better storytellers than Steven Spielberg.
Of course.
But he yeah. So no, it worked very well. I was there are times like the whip happens to be one of my loves, and what I wanted to see was I like to see the whip in action, and we've really only seen the whip start to finish once, and it was in Temple of Doom. Otherwise, he'd always done it in a series of cuts, which it worked fine story wise because the imagination of the audience put the story together. And I mean, that was one of the things that inspired me to. I actually created my own system of working with the whip. It's the DeLongis rolling loop. To me, it's a flexible supersonic blade. So I utilize the 8 angles of attack, and whereas most people yank and slash, my system rolls and stabs, which is both more efficient, more effective. It's safer. I have safety factors built in there because I can not hit you. I can strike anything you want me to hit, or I can send the whip past the person I'm working with so that it cracks, then comes back and envelops them from, again, all those 8 angles. It's one of the things I'm proudest of. The whip's the first man-made tool to break the sound barrier. It dates to 3000 BC in both the Egyptian and Chinese cultures that we know of. So it's 5,000 years old. So it's always historically correct. I was always I'd always wanted the chance to whisper into Steven Spielberg's ear that you should have Indy at some point, dust off some, little piece of rock or whatever, and there's a figure with a whip, because it would be, it would be true and it would be fun because the whip is, of course, Indy's iconic character action prop.
That totally. So just real quick, we are running out of time here, but I do want to know a little bit about when you were on Lock and Load with Arlie Ermy. You were on 2 episodes. You were on the sword and the pistol episode, and you were showing Gunny how to ride a horse while shooting a gun at a certain object. And we definitely saw that is a lot harder than it looks. So it's all about timing.
Yes. Yes, it is. Well, I specialize in doing precision weapons work on horseback. I came to it late in life. I was almost 40. Some 30 years later, I've been on horseback in 11 countries on 5 continents, and everywhere I've gone, I have gotten a horse comfortable with my having a whip or a sword or a lance, and occasionally, firearms. I take the time. It doesn't take long, but I take the time to make the horse an ally rather than surprising them. I've had to work a couple of times on situations where it was a big surprise to the horse, and it's like, yeah, well, I hope you got it in that one shot because he knows what's coming now and he doesn't trust me anymore. But I can it's on my reel. If anybody goes to my website, DeLongis.com, DELONGS.com, and go to the Swordmaster reel, and you'll see me take a target. This was on More Extreme Marksman, where we were doing stuff and showing, the precision. I cut a wick out from underneath the candle flame, and the flame is still there, but the wick is gone. And then we show the power of the whip, and I have my buddy is holding a wine glass, and I just cut right through it, and then the glass explodes. But he said, well, what else can we do? So I said, well, okay, how about if I ride by these 3 targets that are set at different angles, and I will cut them with the whip as I ride by. And then we did one where my buddy took off, and I caught him, and I cut a target out of his left hand. And then we did a head-to-head charge where I'm coming at him and I roll the whip right past the horse's head and crack a target out of his hand. And that they were my horses. That requires a horse to really trust you, because people don't like to have a whip crack in their face. Neither do horses either. But you put in the time, and so it's that's the kind of precision I can work at, and that's. I like to train to be able to actually do something because it makes it really easy to film.
Definitely. All right. So the final question is, for those of you who want to get into the stunt business, what would you recommend for them to do? What's is there the the one golden key, or is this one of those definite jobs where you have to pay your dues?
Yes. I have no idea what the golden key is in that. The entertainment business is highly, highly, highly competitive. And
Yes.
I've worked as an actor in front of the camera. I've worked as a fight coordinator and a weapons expert, or a teacher trainer, or behind the camera, I'm helping somebody else look really good. I've doubled people before, which I'm always happy to do, to give their character another layer of credibility. I do voice work. That's where my theater training has given me yet another potential opportunity. I take my weapons skills. I'm always learning and training to add to my skills. Um, there isn't any secret. The opportunity is always the most difficult thing. So you need to train so that when an opportunity presents itself, you can maximize that opportunity and hopefully turn it into more things. It's You can't know too much. I guess I keep circling around to this. Keep training, keep learning. You will probably come, if you're trying to get into the stunt business, you will probably come with a specialty where you're as good as or better than pretty much anybody else at that skill. And that is a good place to begin. But if you can only do one thing, you won't work as often. So if that is what gets you into the industry, or while you're attempting to convince somebody to give you a chance, that you'll, A, be safe, and B, be able to really deliver the goods, you need to be adding to your skills. The more skills you have, the more rounded you are, the more likely you'll be able to connect one job to another, the more you'll be able to contribute to a team. Because I'm in the actors branch of the motion picture, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and I'm certainly not alone, but it's like nothing puts the art and the science into movies more so than stunt and action. It's an amazing combination of creativity and expertise and teamwork. So it's why so many people want to do it.
Absolutely. Definitely. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for doing this for me. And it's an honor to have a legendary person in the movie business to be my first guest on my podcast, a brand new podcast. Don't forget to go on to the Bondman Productions. That is my YouTube channel. And hopefully more and more episodes will come around. Who knows? Maybe I'll interview Tony Boggs next. You never know.
You could, Tony, that would be a real coup for you, because Tony's pretty quiet, but he has a lot of stories, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. He's a wonderful man. Please give him my regards and respect.
I will definitely do so. And I will see you on the ranch for my whip training.
Sounds good. I look forward to your call.
All right. Thank you so much.
Let people know that people come from all over the country, all over the world, to train with me here at Rancho Andalo in Canyon Country.
Yes, absolutely.
Basically, we tailor things so when people want to add to their skills, come see me.
Yeah, for those of you who want to master in whipcraft and swordcraft and martial arts and so on, Mr. DeLongis here will teach you all the tricks of the trade. And who knows, you might be the next Jet Li if you're lucky.
Sounds good. All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. No, bye-bye.
Have a good one.